para sa immigration updates sa Kababayan Today.
This American Dream segment is brought to you by Aquino & Lowe Law Firm, answering your immigration questions.
Attorney Allison Aquino, Lady in Blue, you look great. Welcome to Kababayan Today. Kamusta?
How are you doing?
Okay, all right. So, pag-usapan natin ngayon ang mga green cards. You understand Tagalog, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Green cards, first of all, expired green cards. What to do?
Well, as far as green cards, everyone knows that they're valid for 10 years, but there are the very, very old green cards that have no expiration date. And so really, actually, the greater question is, you know, what do you do about, or what's the concern as far as losing your green card?
Yes, because the first rule in keeping your green card and keeping it valid is that you can't be out of the U.S. for more than 1 year.
Exactly.
That's a general rule.
That's a general rule.
Okay.
And most people know that they have to come, that they cannot be outside the U.S. for more than 1 year. Otherwise, you risk losing your green card. And so people knowing that, what they sometimes try to do is come into the U.S. for, say, a month, go back to the Philippines for, say, just under 1 year, and then touch base.
Okay.
So that's one concern. And eventually, a person will have problems if they just make it, if they just come back and touch base in the United States.
All right. Our slide number 2 says entry will be allowed regardless of length of time outside the U.S. Can you explain this to us?
Yes. And so some people are, they cannot come back to the U.S. within that 1 year period of time.
Okay.
And so there are some situations where a person does have to be outside the U.S. maybe for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, even more.
Okay.
And so the concern is, can they come back to the U.S.?
Yes.
Can they still use that green card and come back to the U.S.?
Okay.
So just like the slide just indicated, when a person is a permanent resident, when they're a green card holder, even though you've been outside the U.S. for a very long period of time, 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, your green card is, or your permanent resident status is always valid.
So you can come back.
You can come back.
Okay.
You can come to the airport, and really what happens at the airport is what's going to determine whether you can keep your green card or if immigration is going to take it away.
So it happens at the airport?
Well, there is an initial determination at the airport. So say a person is coming back into the United States. Obviously, immigration is going to ask them, well, why have you been outside for so long?
Right.
And so people do need to make sure that they're prepared to answer those questions, because what will happen is that if immigration believes that they've been outside the U.S. for too long and deems them to have abandoned their permanent residency, what immigration will do is, the good part is that they will let the person come into the United States.
Right.
So that they can appear before a judge in court in order to make arguments to the judge as to whether they should be entitled to keep their green card because they did not abandon their residency, or whether immigration is going to be able to take it away.
So you're allowed entry
Absolutely.
to attend your removal proceedings.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in the removal proceedings, it's still not too much a concern. I was reading the notes because burden of proof lies on immigration.
Correct.
To prove that you abandoned your
permanent residency.
Yes.
Exactly. And actually, immigration knows that. So at the border, knowing that the burden is on them, they will pick and choose. Only really the egregious, the really bad cases of, you know, people being outside the U.S. for very long periods of time, they know that it's their burden to prove to a judge that the person abandoned their residency. So you really might actually get lucky at the border and to just get a break and be able to come in, and even though you've been gone for a long period of time, they'll still let you just keep your green card.
Okay, and slide number 4 says the exact words and phrases, right? Clear, unequivocal, and convincing evidence.
Exactly. So it's a very, very high standard. And so because the burden is on the government to prove that you abandoned your residency by clear, unequivocal, and convincing evidence, it's a hard standard. And so, for example, there was a new case where a person was outside, a United Kingdom citizen was outside the U.S. for 3 years in order to take care of his elderly mother who was ill with dementia. So even after 3 years, he came back in, used an expired green card to come back into the United States. And in this case, which was decided mid-August of this year, the court specifically confirmed this very high standard to the Immigration Service. And so his case is actually still winding through the courts. It's being sent back so that they can gather more facts as to whether he did did abandon his permanent residency or not. But even in that example, 3 years outside the U.S., he's back here in the U.S.,
Right.
you have a fighting chance, you really should take advantage of it.
And while you're fighting that, you can work and live here as...
Exactly,
Oh, okay.
because you're a permanent resident. Until the government formally takes it away from you, you are a permanent resident.
So what are we taking away from this conversation, Allison? If people out there are watching, maybe, you know, they've been out of the U.S. for 1 year, more than 1 year, and then, or maybe if their visa, green card has expired, what will be your general rule for them, general advice?
They should take the opportunity, knowing that the burden is on the government. Come back in, make your case.
Okay.
Know that at the border, they're going to use all of your statements against you, potentially in removal proceedings. So you need to be prepared, probably consult with an attorney before you get here so that you know what statements you're going to make, and then be prepared to defend yourself and be able to show the ties that you've maintained in the U.S. while you're gone and the permanent residence that you kept.
And that is my advice. Call a reputable lawyer, one that you can depend on right now, and that's Attorney Aquino and Low, Attorney Allison Aquino, and Attorney Richard Low. Information on the screen if you want to schedule your appointment. Thank you. More power to you.
Thank you, Janelle.
Back with entertainment news on Kababayan Today. Don't go away.